Hello and welcome in a new episode preparing you for the PMP exam. I'm your instructor Nader Omran. In this episode we will talk about the project management processes. At the end of this episode you will be able to define what is a project management process, explain the interaction between processes, and draw the whole project management processes coherent. Also to differentiate between several information types we may have in our project. The definition of project management in the BIM book guide as follows. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. That means you need to deploy this knowledge, skills, tools and techniques in your projects to find out which processes to be deployed in your project.
But what is a process?
A process is a set of interrelated actions and activities performed to achieve a pre-specified product, result or service. Each process is characterized by its inputs, the tools and technique also, that can be applied. And the project manager must consider organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. We will always need the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors in all of our project management processes, even they are not specified as inputs in the process specification, because they include information needed in all processes. The organizational process assets include guidelines and criteria, which help you to choose the appropriate processes for the specific project. And we know the enterprise environmental factors constrain the project, because most of the time it limits the project options.
But who should select the appropriate processes for the project?
The project management team. They should select the appropriate processes required to meet the project objectives, or they could use a new approach that can be adopted. And they should understand the requirements to meet stakeholder needs and expectations, and also balancing the competing constraints, which we talked about before. Those are scope, time, cost, quality, resources, and risk.
Is there different kind of processes in a project?
Well, in a project you can find two kinds of processes. Project management processes. This is to ensure the effective running of the project throughout its life cycle. These processes describe the tools and techniques and how to apply the skills and capabilities. The second kind is product-oriented processes. We talked about it before in the project life cycle. This is to specify and create the product of a project. Product-oriented processes should not be ignored, as it's often overlap and interact with project management processes throughout the project life. You, as a project manager, you cannot define the scope of a project which should deliver a product without knowing basics about this product. In this course, we will learn about project management processes, which apply globally across the industry groups. Project management processes enhance the chance of success over a wide range of projects.
Should we apply this standard project management processes to all kinds of projects?
No, the project manager and his team should carefully choose each process with its inputs and outputs. This effort is known as tailoring. Project management processes always interact with each other. They are integrative, interrelated, aligned, and coordinated. That's why the project manager should actively manage these interactions to meet sponsor or customer and other stakeholders' requirements, and may also repeat one or more processes to achieve the needed objective. The project processes may generate information to improve the management of future projects, like historical information produced from each project. Project management processes are grouped into 5 categories, known as project management process groups or process groups. And those are Initiating process group. Those are the processes of defining a new project or phase of an existing project to get a formal authorization to start the project or phase. Planning process group. Those are the processes of building the scope of a project, refining the objectives and defining the actions to take to attain the project objectives. Executing process group. Those are the processes of executing the defined work in the project management plan to achieve the project specification. Monitoring and controlling process group. Those are the processes of monitoring, reviewing, and controlling the ongoing processes and maintaining the performance by identifying and initiating changes. And the last group is the closing process group. Those are the processes of finishing and closing the work in all processes to close the project or phase. As we know from previous episodes, projects are single or multi-phases. In multi-phase projects, processes are repeated within each phase until the criteria for phases completion have been satisfied. Let's see how project management processes interacts. The project management processes are well defined in the PMBOK guide, but most experienced project managers recognize there is more than one way to manage the project. Project management processes is an iterative effort, and most of the processes are repeated during the project. The initiating process group begins the project or phase, and the closing process group ends it. The planning process group provides the executing process group with the project management plan and project documents. And the executing process group may modify the project management plan. Monitoring and controlling process group represent the integrative nature of project management and interacts with all other process groups. Process groups are overlapping activities which occur throughout the project life. The output of one process generally becomes an input to another process. In this slide, we will describe the 5 project management process groups required for any project. These 5 process groups interact and have the same sequence on each project, and it's not linked to a specific area or industry. Here we can see the overall basic flow and interactions between process groups and specific stakeholders. A process group includes processes that have inputs and outputs, where the outcome of one process becomes the input to another. The process groups are not project phases, but a project phase includes the 5 process groups. That means in a multi-phase project, the 5 process groups will be repeated in each phase. We will always use this figure in this course to visualize the input and output to or from each process. That will help you to remember the process flow when you are sitting by the PMP exam. Initiating process group. The initiating process group contains 2 processes, in which we should define a new project or a new phase in an existing project. The purpose of these initiating processes is to get authorization to start the project or phase, and to define the initial scope, initial budget, and the initial resources. For example, the internal and external stakeholders who will interact and influence the project should be identified. Sometimes key stakeholders are assigned from the beginning, Also, the project manager should be selected from the beginning. We should collect and write down all this information in the project charter and in the stakeholder register, which they are outputs from this process group. These both files of information should be officially authorized. Also, a predefined project management team can participate in developing the project charter. And the senior management or sponsor is responsible for approval and funding the project. Sometimes in a very large projects, the initiating process group is divided into phases. In each phase you should also find initiating process group. The reason is to validate the decision made. Also, sometimes the initiating processes may be performed by program or portfolio processes, external to the project management processes. In this case, you as a project manager, you don't have to go through these processes. You will get the project charter and the stakeholder register ready to start the planning processes. But conducting the initiating processes helps you to focus on the purpose of the project. Also helps to verify the success criteria and reviewing the expectation of stakeholders. Then you come out with the decision whether the project should be continued, delayed, or discontinued. If the customer or the key stakeholders are involved from the beginning, that will gain ownership, deliverables acceptance, and stakeholder satisfaction. At the end of the initiating processes, we should come out with the clear descriptions of the project objectives and the reasons why this project is the best alternative to satisfy the requirement. And also we come out with the initial project scope statement, deliverables, project durations, resource forecast, and the project manager authorization to acquire resources. Planning process group. The planning process group consists of 24 processes. In those processes, we identify and define the deliverable and project scope, as well as the effort needed by setting clear objectives. By developing a plan describes how to react in all processes to achieve the project objectives. In this process group, the project team collects inputs of information and stakeholders buy-in while developing the project management plan. Here we develop the project management plan and the project documents which will join us in our project. Sometimes in a complex projects we need to make additional analysis during the planning phase, also during the executing phase. This additional analysis leads us to revisit the planned documents and sometimes the initiated documents also, to add or update the information during the project progress. This is called progressive elaboration.
That means the planning and documenting are iterative and ongoing activities?
Correct. And the benefit of this process group is to draw strategic and acting lines to follow in the project to be successfully completed. In this process group, it is your best chance to get stakeholder buy-in. The output of this process group is the project management plan and project documents, which includes the plan for the scope, the time, cost, quality, communications, human resource, risks, procurement, and stakeholder management.
But this iterative and ongoing activities in the planning phase is indefinitely? When should initial plan ends?
The organizations set procedures to indicate when the initial plan should end. It depends on the nature of the project and environments around the project. For instance, oftentimes risks arise after a long way of planning is already done. That will lead us to update risks documents. The next group is the executing process group. The executing process group consists of 8 processes, which conducted to complete the work planned in the project management plan, to satisfy the project requirements and stakeholder expectations. Here you are bringing people, resources and facilities together to perform the work defined in the project management plan to attain the project objectives. The outputs of this process group are the deliverables, change requests, work performance information, selected sellers, and procurement contracts. Oftentimes during the execution of the project, you may face some results which need a change, and this change may lead to update the project management plan or baselines. That means rework or means longer activities duration, and that also means increasing cost. That's why a large part of the project budget will be expended in performing the executing processes. Monitoring and controlling process group. Monitoring and controlling process group consists of 11 processes. Here we are controlling the project progress and performance, and take actions where changes are needed. In this process group, the project team are viewing and validating the project in the mean of deliverables, change requests, and work performance.
What is the key benefit of this process group?
The benefit in this process group is to get regular measurements and analysis of the project performance, to discover any variances that may happen to the project plan, including scope, cost, time, quality, etc.
But when should I measure the project performance and how?
Well, the monitoring and controlling processes are iterative. The review and measurements should be done regularly, but it depends on the project circumstances. The project manager and the project team should identify how often. The effort in this process group is done by controlling changes, including corrective or preventive actions against issues that may occur during the project, and also by monitoring the ongoing project activities against the project management plan and the agreed baselines, by allowing only the necessary and approved changes. Monitoring and controlling the project gives the project team a whole vision about the project performance status to take actions where actions are needed.
What exactly the project team is monitoring?
They are monitoring and controlling the work being done within a process group, and also monitor and control the entire project effort. The outputs of this process group are the approved change requests, control measurements, and performance report. In case of multi-phase projects, this process group coordinates the project phases in order to implement actions against issues to align the project with the project management plan. Closing process group. The closing process group consists of 2 processes. Those processes are conducted to finish and close all activities across all process groups to officially complete the project or phase. Here we are formally establishing the close of the whole defined processes and work accordingly to the plan.
But what if the project does not complete its objectives? Or cancelled, or has a critical situation that prevents us to continue on this project?
In this case, we should make a formally premature closure of the project.
Premature closure?
Yes, prematurely closed projects are those projects which cannot be formally closed. For example, in case of claims, termination clauses, etc. The nature of the work effort in the closing process group is done by obtaining acceptance by the customer or the sponsor to formally close the project or phase, and then reviewing and preparing for the closure of all activities. And if some processes were changed or tailored, we should record the impact of this change or tailoring. We have also to document lessons we have learned during conducting the project work. We should also update the organizational process assets. For example, this should be done in case if you missed some procedure or policies in your project, or some criteria are no longer needed in the organization process assets. The effort in this process group also includes archiving of all project documents, usually in the Project Management Information System (PMIS), to be used as a historical data. This is a third-party project management software like Microsoft Project or SAP, etc. Also, we have to close all procurement contracts we made during the project with all relevant agreements, ensuring soft closing with sellers and partners. One more important effort should be done as last in this process group is to perform assessments of the project team. For example, how they performed and applied the project work. And we finish this group by releasing the project resources. This includes project team and all other involved facilities. And these 5 process groups include the 47 processes divided as follows. The initiating process group contains 2 processes. The planning process group contains 24 processes. And the executing process group contains 8 processes. The monitoring and controlling process group contains 11 processes. And the last group is closing process group. It contains 2 processes. And if we add this table to this view, it will reflect the mapping of the 47 project management processes into the 5 project management process groups and 10 project management knowledge areas. You will find this figure in the PMBOK Guide 5th edition, page 61. It's very important to dump this table to your brain. It will help you to realize the process flow of all project management processes, and it is the key for several exam questions you might get in your exam. Project information. There are huge amounts of information collected during the life of the project. This information travels across the project boundary by several physical and electronic ways. The project data are iteratively collected and analyzed during the project execution, which means there are many versions of the same data. And that leads to stakeholder confusion to differentiate between different types of information.
What is the best approach to avoid this confusion?
By following those guidelines, the project information divided into 3 types: work performance data, work performance information, and work performance reports. Work performance data. This is the raw measurements identified and collected during the project. Examples of work performance data are reported percent of work completed, quality and technical performance measures, start and finish dates of scheduled activities, number of change requests, number of defects, actual costs, actual durations, etc. Work performance information. This is the performance information collected from several controlling processes, showing the current status and relationship to other areas, Examples of work performance information are status of deliverables, implementation status for change requests, and forecasted end date. Work performance reports. This is the representation of work performance information related to project documents. Examples of work performance reports are status reports, memos, justifications, information notes, electronic dashboards, recommendations, and updates. We arrived to the end of this episode. Now we should be able to define a project management process, explain the interactions between processes, draw the whole project management processes coherent, differentiate between several information types. I hope it was informative for you and thank you for watching.